Okay, let's point it over here. Don't know how many people are going to end up logging in or checking in on this, but let's see how it goes. For people who are watching this after the fact, we're going to be talking about Forge and that. Which is why I used to glue back the blade that I released the video on today, the bolo knife. But we'll wait for some people to get on here. Maybe let's do this. Maybe that's a little bit better. I'm trying to keep this light from wiggling around. So we got 2 people. That's not bad. I'll try and get a few people to get in on here. Let's see how this goes. I didn't send out a notification saying, hey, I'm going to be going live, so we'll see what happens. There's 9 people. That's pretty cool. What's up, y'all? Howdy back at you. So tonight I'm actually going to talk about 2 things that I get asked. Well, one of the things I get asked about quite a bit. The other thing I got asked about quite a bit today. What's up? Well, hey, at least thank you for, coming in, checking in, Berserker Blades. My wife just got back from teaching a dance class, Nisha, down there in the comment section. So I was able to go ahead and hop on here. So today, in this video, this live stream, I'm going to kind of answer a couple of questions about my forge and the setup on it. So whenever I did this forge, whenever I built it, I didn't really do a video on it. So I'm going to kind of explain a couple of things about this, but I also wanted to talk about the whole blue backing, the spine that I did on the bolo knife, the video that I released today. I had like the actual only question, it was asked by a few people, was why I went that direction versus just tempering it like normal, and what did that do to the blade versus tempering it like normal. Why would I do that versus the other thing? What was the point behind it? So I'm going to explain that in this live stream after I talk about this. So I'm also going to answer questions during this, so feel free to ask questions while we're actually doing this live stream, and we'll see how that goes. So for one, my forge is a lot different than most of the forges that you actually see out there in YouTube land. So most of the time when you see a forge, especially whenever you're seeing something with like a Frosty T or a Venturi burner, almost all of them, the burners are on top of the forge. Some of them you'll see the burners coming in at an angle. There's a reason behind me doing the forge this way, and I kind of want to tell y'all about that. And as people get on here, because there's not many people watching right now, I might reiterate some of that. So one of the big reasons behind the forge being set up like this, and one of the reasons why a lot of people who have ribbon burners, why they set their forges up like this, is because of what the flame does inside the forge. So if you're going to end up building your own forge, I would suggest thinking about doing something like this right here. Okay? So a lot of people, whenever they are using their forge, they're going to be doing a couple of different things. So your standard forge is going to have a really big chamber, and those flames shoot directly down onto the surface of the steel that you're working with. So on the typical forges that have your burners right here, flames shooting straight down, your steel's in the center. What do a lot of those people do? They get themselves a square tube or the piece of angle iron like this as a baffle, and they put it inside the forge, and then they put their steel under this so that flame's not burning directly on the blade. This is what long-term flame burning on steel does. That right there. Which is why a lot of people take their flame, or they put one of these in there so that flame doesn't do that to their steel. So the reason behind me doing the forge like this, to where they burn from the side, what ends up happening is these are actually to the top of the bricks that are on the side here. They blow towards the top of the brick right here, and it creates a vortex in here. So as the flames are coming in, they're coming in here, creating a vortex, and they're heating the whole entire internal chamber. You don't have those weird cold spots that you have with multi-burner forges. So I put the burners slightly closer than the way that they came from where I ordered them from. They had a little bracket that connected them, and I put them too far apart, which gave me a cold spot in the center of the forge. Well, I trashed that bracket, made my own bracket, and then of course welded the frame and everything that you see here that they attach to, and put them close enough together to where they actually have no cold spot in the center of the forge. Now, because it creates a vortex, that's what I'm using to heat the steel. Whenever I put my blades in here, so I just toss a blade in here, I can just put it straight here in the bottom. The flame is not directly touching this. The flame's hitting the wall, and it's swirling around in here, heating that whole entire forge up. So whenever I'm going through and I'm heat treating, or I'm doing any of my normalizing and all that stuff, the flame's not directly on it. I don't need a baffle. All I got to do is throw the blade in there, do my job, pull it out, and you're done. Makes it a lot easier. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because a lot of people make their own forges. And if you're not making your own forge and you're buying your own forge, that's perfectly fine. Just use a baffle on the inside of it, which again is something like a square tube, or this, to keep the flame directly off of your blade. Because what it'll do is it'll get hot inside this chamber, but the flames are on the outside, and it's not burning your steel or putting hot spots on your steel or burning just a section of your steel. It's letting you heat evenly. I always want to explain stuff like that because my forge is different, and I want people to understand why I built it the way that I built it. And it's a very easy forge. These burners are off of Amazon. Okay? You can get these off of Amazon. I think they were like 80 bucks. There we go. I think they were like 80 bucks for the both of them. They are very simple, very, very, very simple burners. And it comes with all that stuff. The little tube, it comes with pretty much, let me get y'all back up here, everything that you need on this. It comes with everything. It comes with the valves, comes with the hose and all that crap. I ended up replacing the hose with actual propane line because the hose that came with it was just like not even gas rated at all. So I ended up changing that out. But whenever I was setting this forge up, I initially set them to where they burn from the top, and then I started thinking about it, and I was like, I think it makes more sense to do it this way. So I scrapped that idea. I cut the bracket out from the center, replaced those bricks, moved it off to the side, and then used it that way, and it was awesome. So I'm going to turn it on real quick, and I'm going to show y'all what I'm talking about when I say that little vortex area. So let's go ahead, light it up real quick, take the steel out. So what it's going to do here, y'all see right there where it is coming around inside there and swirling? That's what we're doing. So at no point, say I put this in here, at no point is that flame just full blown on the actual steel. It's swirling around, getting nice even heat as we go. Now, of course, if you're going to be forging something, you want to wait for your forge to fully heat up and come to temp. But the whole point behind the forge being set up this way was so that the burner would come in, hit the brick right here, and then roll around inside there and create that vortex. So if you're going to end up building a forge like this, it's very simple. This is not expensive. This This is not a expensive forge by any means. Okay, whenever you are building something like this, I have about $100 in fire brick right here, and about $10 in angle iron and flat bar, and then I have about, I think it was like $80 in the burners. So, I mean, really, $200, and you have something that can heat treat. You have something that can come up the forge welding temps. You have something that you've seen me forge large things with it. The internal chamber on this is 18 inches long. So from front to back, it's 18 inches. You can fit an 18-inch blade in there and do your job. So I just suggest, you not even think about that, taking some of those forges that they already make that are built that way and turning them on their side. That's actually a good idea. Might try that. And yeah, this was my idea based on ribbon burners. So a lot of people that have the ribbon burners, they have them coming in from the side, and I thought, okay, that's a really good idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, whenever I originally set up this forge, you can see inside there, you can actually see where there's 2 hotter spots, and then like right there, you can see one hot spot, go right behind it, there's another hot spot. As the forge heats up, that will connect and it will not be there anymore. It'll all be one solid, consistent temp, which is why I moved the burners closer together. A lot of the forges that you get nowadays that are 2-burner forges, their burners are too far apart. So you end up with a cold spot in the center. If you could, take those burners and move them slightly closer together. It's going to make your life a lot easier. If you get a 3-burner forge, you're not really going to have an issue with that. But a lot of the 2-burner forges I see, those burners are just too far apart. You end up with a cold spot in the center of the forge. And what ends up happening whenever you have a cold spot like that is if you have your blade inside there laying down, what's going to happen is 2 spots on it, the tip and maybe the near the ricasso, those are going to be a lot hotter than the center. So what you have to do is you have to move that steel in and out of the forge inside there in order to get that heat even. So you got to move it, move it, move it, move it, move it. What you want to do is get it to where your forge, the whole entire thing gets nice and warm, and then you don't have to worry about that as much. But that right there is my little, it was kind of like a little science experiment for me to be able to figure out what made the most sense whenever I was building this. And the nice thing about it is this forge, with the way it's set up versus my old forge, what's up Jason, it's really, really quiet. So I don't have to like yell over this thing whenever I'm filming or doing anything like that. And I don't know if it's just the way that it's set up, because it's creating that vortex, and it's not like just blowing straight down onto the fire bricks on the bottom, but it made it to where I can easily film while it's on, and it's not like screaming at people in the background. I've really enjoyed this forge, and I'm happy that it worked out. Let's see here. I know, okay, so I kind of put out 2 videos in one day. I released that Shop Talk Tuesday today, and then, you know, did this 1 push-up or double and give it to the next person. I can actually do a lot of push-ups, but we'll save that. I do push-ups with my kids on my back. So how do you adjust the flame on this? If you're going to go over here and you're going to adjust it, I've actually got knobs here. That lets me adjust the temperature, or the amount of flame, the amount of propane. I've got it for both sides. If I want it to get real hot in there, I crank them up, and it's running about 30 psi right now. You can see how hot it's getting in there. And I don't typically run it that high. Turn that down a little bit. But yeah, it'll get It'll get real hot if I turn it all the way up. But yeah, you just adjust the flame on the little valves that are right here. And then of course, you can adjust the amount of air that's coming in by the little guys that are on top of here. There's like little, they almost look like washers, and they actually adjust the amount of air. They spin on a piece of all thread, and they adjust the amount of air that you're able to pull through. Because the way that these burners work is you've got your propane. So propane's coming out of a tent about right here. And what's happening is it's pulling the air through, because the flame's on the other end, it's pulling that air through, and that's how you adjust a lot of things. How much air, whether you want it to be a more fuel-driven flame or you want it to be more air-driven flame, that's when you adjust this. Then of course you can adjust the fuel as well. Depends on how much oxygen you want in there. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off so that we're not absolutely sweating up a storm here. So the reason why I designed it like this was, again, because I saw a few different forges that were ribbon burner forges, and they were coming from the side, and they were creating a nice vortex, and I thought, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go ahead and try that. And I still haven't seen many people create them, even though there's a lot of YouTubers out there that have their own forges that they made. I'm surprised that not many of them have swapped to this right here. A lot of them are still doing that burner from the top design, and this is actually a lot better. So think about it that way. Now, it's saying my device is overheating. That's how hot it just got in here. I'm going to do one thing real quick. Let's move the fan to where it actually blows on the phone. So when it comes down to like thinking about tools that you're going to build in your shop, you know, don't be afraid to build something different than what everybody else has. Just because all of the forges come a specific way doesn't mean you have to design your forge that way, or you have to get a forge that's built that way. You know, don't be afraid to play with the design, move it, change it, modify it. You know, this is my fourth forge that I've reconstructed or rebuilt. I've got a ton of fire brick down here from past forges, and like I could build a whole second one of these if I wanted to out of just a spare fire brick that I have below it. Okay, there we are. Having that forge on in here, like my camera that I use can withstand the temperature and withstand the heat, but this phone does not like it. So hopefully that'll be a little bit better. Let's see what we got here. So can you get it hot and ruin the blade when heat treating? Yes, it will get hot enough to forge well. So if you wanted to get your steel 2,000 degrees, that forge will absolutely do that. So if you just set the steel in there, it would absolutely burn it, and it would not be an awesome experience. Tested one of those Mr. Volcano 2-burner forges. It was fine until I ran with one burner, then flame warped. And okay, so the other side of the issue, whenever you're using a 2-burner forge and you are just using one flame, it's not that awesome. So what ends up happening is, on a 2-burner forge, what you have to do is you have to close off the other valve. So if you're going to be doing this one burner, the other valve, like the inlet for the air, needs to be shut off, because what will end up happening is you'll be blowing air in here, or you know, your heat in here. That heat's going to escape out of every direction that it can escape from. So it's going to come out the front door, it's going to come out the back door, but it's also going to come down the tube and come out where the air intake is on a Venturi or a Frosty T-burner. It's going to come out of that. What's going to do? And it's going to start melting your hose, especially if you have the 2 burners to where the burners are on top. All that heat's coming out, and it's going straight to the lines that you have hooked up to your valves. So it'll start melting that line. So it's almost better to either shut off the valve, or you can have propane going through the second burner, but just have it turned down to where it's just doing enough to create the flame and pull cool that air down into that tube and keep the heat inside the forge, only a couple psi, and then you're going to have your other burner running its full psi like you're going to do anyways. So it's just, I've had these things pop off and catch these lines on fire, and it's terrifying because you just have a flame going nuts over here. Some people think it might blow up your shop or something like that, but what it's going to do, just how your burner works, you've got a small hole coming out, the propane's going out there, and it's lit on fire. The reason why it has such a nice flame is because the amount of tube that you have, the length of tube, the fact that my brick is flared out. So inside the forge, I created a cone in the brick, and that's what helps keep the flame nice and where it's at. If your line comes off and it catches on fire, what it's going to do, it's just going to be a little flamethrower. It's not going to shoot out a huge flame. It's just going to have a little flamethrower thing coming off the side. Until you actually neck it down, send it through a tube and condense it and all that stuff, that's when it creates that cool blue flame. If you were to pop that hose off and you just lit the end of that line, the propane will be shooting out, and it's going to be a real ugly flame that's not going to be super dangerous. You don't want it to get all the way back to your propane tank, but it's not going to instantly just blow up. So, disclaimer there. If it does blow up, I'm sorry. So, with this, that's something that I've learned in the process was the fact that the heat would come back out and it will melt your hose off over here. It's one of the other reasons why I have it running off the side, so I don't have to worry about stuff like that. I can run one burner or both burners on this if I want to. I just tend to use both burners whenever I'm doing everything, because most of the stuff that I make is quite large. I tend to do a lot of 10 to 15 inch cutting edge blades. Whenever I'm making something smaller, it's actually pretty easy for me to take one of my bricks that I have down here, and what I'll do is, even if it's one like this right here, imagine taking this and sliding it in there to where what it'll do is I will basically put it back just in front of the second burner to where it's blocking off the hole going through that burner, and it creates a one burner forge that's half the size of the forge right now. So if I'm using just a small amount of steel, I can just use that one burner and create a smaller chamber, and I don't have to use as much heat or propane in order to heat up that chamber. And it's just by sliding one of those fire bricks straight inside there. Yeah, I know the fan's annoying. But if I don't do that, it's 108 degrees in Texas, and where I live today. Yesterday we were the hottest place in America, which is ridiculous that my town could even do that. It is horrible. See you later, Jim. So the downside to Texas again is we're going through some crazy heat wave, and I live in a place called Wichita Falls, Texas, and it has been insane here. So if I don't have the fan on, for one, I would instantly be sweating and my phone would turn off because of how hot it gets in here. If I have the forge going, it's about 130 in here, 130, 135, and it's miserable, but you make it work. But yeah, it's supposed to get better next week. We have a couple of days where it's supposed to be like 80 degrees, and I'm pretty sure that I need to winterize my house or something like that, because that is like a super cold front. 80 in Texas right now, people will be wearing blankets. It's ridiculous. Your oldest brother lives in Wichita Falls? Well, you should tell him to come say hi. So, one of the other things, so I don't typically forge outside whenever it's that hot. I will whenever I get the rest of what's going on over here done. Right now, my big old opening is covered in a sheet of plastic. I've got doors that are going to be going in there. It's big glass doors. I was going to make doors, but I want to have the extra light. So, because I don't have windows on any of the other walls, I'm going to be doing window in my main door as the entry, glass doors going out this big exit right here, and then I'm actually going to be putting a hole in this wall right here going into the other shop and doing another set of double doors right there. That way I can help have natural light, because the other shop has big windows, and I'm going to do that so that I can walk in and out of that area, and I can use the AC that's in my 12 by 12 to help cool this area off. There's a few things that I still need to do though. I still need to insulate the ceiling in here. You can see that all the roof and everything's all exposed here. I need to add insulation to there. But eventually what I'll end up doing, I've got a canopy that's going to be going off the front of the shop, part that y'all don't really see. I've got another 8 feet by 16 feet pad that's outside this big opening right here, and I will be bringing the forge out there and then still hammering inside the shop, but the forge will be outside under the canopy whenever I'm doing that, and it will actually decrease the temperature in here a lot. Plus I got to think through other ways to keep it cool in here. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, because I wasn't expecting to have as many questions about it whenever I released that video today. I wasn't really expecting, I'm going to see if I can move this down now. Maybe that'll decrease some of the fan noise, I don't know. One of the things that I was asked a lot about in the video that I released today was blue backing the spine, or bluing the spine back, whenever I did the whole heat treat process. So I quenched it, and then instead of tempering it inside the oven, I blued the spine back. So a lot of people ask me about that. Why would I do that versus temper the whole entire blade? If I leave the edge super hard, isn't that going to chip or crack? Are we going to have issues with that? So if you saw the video, I take my little handy dandy, mud trowels, set up right here, sand in it, water in it, and then I stuck the edge down inside this to insulate it and keep it from letting that heat that I use the torches to do from going down to the edge. So whenever I quenched it the first time, it was about 60, a 65 HRC file was absolutely skating. So it was harder than 65 HRC. So what I ended up doing was put it in the oven, tempered it down. So 400 degrees, I think it was technically reading right at about 385. 385 for 2 hours. And just from that tempering process by itself, it brought it down to under 55 hardness, so 55 HRC. And I did not like that. So I'm not a big fan of quenching my blades multiple times, but on this one I had to do it. So I went ahead, put it in the forge, brought it back up to temp, quenched it again, and it ended up being at right between 60 and 65 on the hardness. A 65 was actually putting scratches into it, but a 60 was skating like it wasn't phasing it at all. So it was probably closer to about 62 Rockwell on there. Now that right there was what I was shooting for the edge hardness by itself. So if I would have taken that blade, and I've had a few people say this and people just kind of dismiss what they're saying. So if I would have taken that blade that was about 62, 63 HRC, and I would put it in the oven and temper it down, what would have ended up happening was it would have dropped real far. So I didn't want that. The easiest way to accomplish a tempered blade that had the edge hardness that I wanted and the spine softness that I wanted was to blue it back. So you take the edge, put it down in the sand, make sure you only have the spine exposed. You take your 2 torches and you go down your spine and you draw that hardness back to what you're looking for. And when I did it, I of course took it from the about 4 inches from the tip of the blade all the way down the spine, and then the ricasso as well. And I tempered just that back to soften that up. That, the tang, all of that. So what that ends up doing is that gives me a softer spine that can handle that shock of me chopping on stuff, and a nice hard edge that is going to stay sharp and hold the edge and not roll or deform. So not many people do the whole gluing it back. They don't typically do that. A lot of people just want to toss it in their oven, let it temper. But again, think about that. Whenever you are putting it in the oven, you are tempering the entire knife back. So a lot of the times whenever you quench your steel, most people are going to quench the whole entire blade. Some people are just going to quench the cutting edge and not really quench the spine. And if you do that, it's going to make it to where the cutting edge is slightly harder than the spine, because the spine is going to slower, or it's going to cool slower versus that edge that cooled real quick. Now, whenever you're doing this whole process, everything when you're doing the tempering process, that the goal that you're trying to achieve is a certain hardness. So if you pulled it out of the quench and it was 68 HRC and you didn't want that, you would go, okay, I need to go ahead and put it in the oven. Now the cool thing about a lot of steels, especially known steels, is you can Google the actual recipe for your steel comes out 68 HRC, and let's say you're using 1084, comes out 68. You can actually Google the formula for that, and it will tell you how high you need to get to temperature, or how hot your oven needs to be, and how long you need to temper it down. So it'll tell you, okay, if it quenched at this hardness, you've tested it, however you can test it, and you want to get it to, let's say 60. It'll tell you, okay, well, in order to do that, you need to do 400 degrees for 2 hours, let it rest 2 hours again, and call it done. Or it'll tell you to use a 350 degree oven at 1.5 hours, do that twice. It'll give you the recipe to bring it down to the actual hardness that you're looking for. And all you got to do is just Google that, and it'll tell you a lot of the stuff that you need to do. There's recipes for pretty much everything to be able to get the exact hardness that you're looking for. The general rule of thumb that a lot of people use for 10 series still, the 1084s or 1080s or 1095s, a lot of that stuff, 5160s, your 80 CRV2s, a lot of people are going to just temper that 400 degrees for 2 hours times 2 and call it done. That's your general thing that you hear every YouTuber say. They're going to do 400 degrees, 2 hours, times 2. That's their tempering process. There's a good chance that not everybody actually uses that exact formula. I don't. I use a few different formulas depending on what steels that I'm using to be able to achieve certain hardnesses for what the blade is going to be used for. Whether it's going to be a camp knife, a chef's knife, those are going to have two different edge hardnesses that you're looking for. A chef's knife is going to typically be a harder edge. You're going to have stuff like that. You want a little bit softer for a camp knife that might get batoned through something, while your chef's knife's not going to get batoned through anything. So you're thinking through strength, integrity, brittleness, all that stuff whenever you're going through and you're thinking about tempering. So it's just something that a few people ask me about, is the edge going to be brittle because I did not temper the edge? Well, I didn't need to temper the edge because it was already the hardness that I was trying to achieve after the temper. But the spine was still slightly harder than what I wanted it to be for such a big knife that I knew that I needed to temper just that area down. And that's whenever you go through and you glue it back so that you achieve the hardness that you want in the specific areas that you're going for. You're not just tempering for the sake of tempering. If your blade came out at, again, 68, 69, 70 Rockwell, it came out, it was that hard, well then you need to temper it back to make it a usable knife. Well, let's say your blade came out at 60. If you ended up tempering that blade, you're going to drop it down into the 50s in hardness. But you're so told that you have to temper it that everybody will temper it. And sometimes you're going to end up dropping that hardness down below what you were actually aiming for, but because you were told by everybody that you had to do that, and everyone does 400 degrees at 2 hours times 2, then you end up screwing yourself. What if you only needed 300 degrees for an hour to temper it? But you just did 400 degrees for 2 hours times 2, and you're still, people will tell you, okay, you're looking for the straw color, the straw finish. If it gets the purple, you heated it too much. But that's not the only thing you're looking for. People who've been doing this for a while understand that the straw color is perfectly fine if you're trying to get into it and you're trying to have like a rule of thumb that you're trying to pay attention to. But I'll be real with you. A lot of my blades go into the oven with oil on them, and by default it will turn the blade purple because that oil turns it that color. If you have your fingerprints on polished steel and you temper it, where your fingerprints are, it's going to be purple, everything else is going to be straw. You can't really go by that color as your rule, because that's not always going to be accurate. That's not going to tell you what your hardness is after the temper. You need to use files. You need to use your test files and things like that to make sure you didn't drop it too low. Because again, a lot of new knife makers are going to go, well, 17 YouTubers told me that the way that I temper my steel is I go 400 degrees for 2 hours times 2. That's what I'm going to do. And again, let's say you pulled your steel out of the quench and it was already 60 HRC. And then you went and tempered it. And even though it was straw color, technically you tempered it to where it was too soft. But you think that you didn't overdo it because it's not purple. But in all actuality, you did. And a lot of people are not going to go ahead and snap test and do all of that stuff to their knives, because once you get to the point to where you've heat treated it and you made it look pretty, you don't want to destroy it, because you might only have made 10 knives to that point, and you don't want to destroy the thing that you just spent all that time creating. Sometimes you gotta fuck it up. I'm just saying, to be able to understand what you did to that steel, you gotta screw it up. And sometimes that's just the way it's gotta go. I snapped a lot of steel in the process of figuring out my heat treat processes and things like that. Let's read a couple of these real quick. Have you ever tried clay in the spine area, then quench? Yes, so I actually do that whenever I'm creating my hamones. So a lot of my steels that I go through and do a hamone on, I'll clay the I'll clay the spine. Listen here. Not happening. I'll say the whole entire thing out, salt and vinegar. If you go through and you're doing a hamone, I'm going to go ahead and clay the spine and do it that way, because you're a differential heat treat whenever you're doing that. So you'll have a whole bunch of people that want to create a hamone, and they will actually do that process. Sometimes, let's say if I'm using a tool steel that water quenches, I want to create a hamone that way. You can just quench it in water, and you're going to have that differential heat treat by default because you shock it in the water, and then the spine's going to stay softer. You also can do that if you're trying to do certain steels. You can shock it in water for a second and then instantly go into your oil and quench it the rest of the way in the oil, and you'll get that differential heat treat coming from the edge all the way up to the spine, and it will actually etch really cool if you do it in your ferric. Gave your channel a shout out last night. Hey, thank you for that, man. I always love shout outs. You can always share these as well, the videos and all that stuff. Let's see here. So whenever you're thinking through, hopefully as a takeaway for this live stream, whenever you're thinking about doing your heat treat process, remember that it's not just the heat it up and quench it part that is the heat treat process. You've got your normalizing, you've got thermal cycling / grain refinement cycles, you've got the actual quench, you've got the temper, and you got to make sure that all of those things add up to an end result. I always tell people this: the end result is what you're trying to achieve. It's the same reason why I talk to people about forging versus stock removal. Who gives a damn? The whole point is getting to the end goal, which is a knife. If you did it through stock removal, you made a knife. If you did it through forging, you made a knife. You know, if you heat treated it in an oven or you heat treated it in a forge, you still made a knife. But you need to take the time and really learn what the actual process is for the steel that you use. You'll see a lot of knife makers who've been doing this for a while who use the same steel over and over and over and over again. I dare you to go watch a Jason Knight video. Just randomly watch 3 different videos. Every single one of those is going to be using 80 CRV2. That is what that guy uses. 80 CRV2, every build. If he's making a knife, it's 80 CRV2. It's just, that is just his jam. Mine is 5160. I love 1084. I like 15 and 20. I like 26C3. I like a lot of the same steels, and I use the hell out of a lot of them. You know, I'll use some 8670 from Pops. A lot of the reasons why I use specific steels is because they have very similar heat treats. So it's going to be something within my wheelhouse, and all of those steels can be easily forged or heat treated in a forge. So you do not need an oven. You don't need long soak times. A lot of people want to start with 1095. Can you heat treat 1095 in a forge and have it a successful blade? Sure, a lot of people do it, but I bet if you snapped all of those blades, they would have weird grain structures. So 1095 needs a soak time. You need to be able to soak that steel for like 5+ minutes, and that's what it loves. Whenever you're going through and you're bringing it up to temp and you're instantly quenching it, you didn't soak it, so you didn't actually get the steel to do what it's supposed to do before you quenched. Yes, is it hard? Sure. But is the grain right? Probably not. So you see that some people take that 1095, heat it up to temp in a coal forge, and then dip it in the motor oil, and then go, yeah, that skates a file, that's a knife, hell yeah. But it's not right. And again, if you're just making the knives for you to use, you're a hobbyist, you want to make these knives, you want to use them, cool, so be it. If you're going to make a knife and you're going to sell it, you need to make sure that you're doing right by your customers and do the process, snap your blades, do tests. You know, all the 5160 that I use in the shop, I have made test pieces, I have quenched them at a few different temperatures, and then snapped them, saw what temperature my oil and my forge needed to be for that particular silky smooth structure, and then said, okay, I'm going to repeat that. I use this little guy right here for a lot of the temperatures that I check. It's a high temp laser thermometer that handles a lot of the stuff for me. Let's see here, using your toaster oven. Do you ever get spikes above? Yes, I do. I've been using my kitchen oven lately for pretty much everything. It actually stays a real consistent temp. The little oven, what ends up happening is it's trying to maintain the temp, so that coil comes on and then shuts off. And if it accidentally drops slightly below, it overheats the coil to get the temp back up real fast. So sometimes you're going to have a 20 to 30 degree difference in that oven as that thing is going off. You'll see a lot of people that will actually modify those ovens. They'll insulate them. They'll do a lot of different things. If you watch Redbeard Ops, he's got a video on his oven that he uses. It's a little toaster oven that he's modified to make it really precise. You should go check that out. He's also made a heat treat oven and all kinds of stuff. That guy has a genius brain. Redbeard Ops, if you haven't checked that out. Another method I use, sliding the edge in water. It works great. Practice. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that do that to where they just edge quench in water, especially if you're using a tool steel that can be done like that. It's absolutely awesome. Let's see here. I love that I'm seeing. I know you're very good at teaching. Well, thank you for that, John. So how much custom work you get versus doing your own stuff? So for me, because I have this channel, I get emails constantly to do custom orders. Now, here's the hard part about custom orders. For me, I know and am confident at how much a custom order would cost. So I'm honest with people whenever I tell them the price of the custom order. You'll find out that a lot of people, as soon as you tell them the price, they'll tell you, no, I can't do that. Here's the deal. You can choose to make it cheaper if you wanted to and lower the price. For me, I need to stick to my guns and tell people what it's going to cost, because I know how much time I'm going to have to put into it. And a lot of the times with custom orders, I do those off the channel, and so I'm not going to get any YouTube revenue off of it or anything like that. And it's got to make sense time-wise, because for me, the time that I'm not doing stuff for the channel is time that directly comes from my family's time. So if I decide to make a custom piece, it needs to work within the budget that I'm setting for that. And I'll tell people a lot, hey, I can make this for you, but it's going to cost this much, because I know how much materials I'm going to use for the handle material, the steel, how much time it's going to take me, how much I want to pay myself per hour to be able to create the thing, and then make it make sense. Do not shortchange yourself, because what you're going to do is you're going to just screw yourself time-wise, money-wise. It needs to make sense for you to make something. Now, if you're making a run of knives, so let's say you're making 10 knives, you can charge less for those because you're replicating the same process, and the faster you can make a knife, the easier it is for you to sell it for a better price. If someone's asking me to make them something that's custom, typically that's going to have a specific wood that I've got to order and get. It's going to be a specific style, and most of the time people want a TRE knife. They don't want me to make them a simple chef's knife. They want me to make them like the stuff that I make on the YouTube builds, or they want me to recreate one of the YouTube builds. A lot of times, if you want to buy one of the YouTube builds, I have them. I either put them on my website for sale, or I keep them. So if y'all ever decided that y'all wanted to buy one of my YouTube builds, all you gotta do is message me, and I'll shoot you out a price for one of them. But be real with yourself and make sure you charge the right amount, especially for a custom build. Gave them friends and family discount, the first one, but not the second one. Yeah, and it's rough. So here's what I found out. So my first 3 custom orders or knives where I did a discount for someone, those experiences were actually some of the worst experiences as a knife maker that I've ever had. So I've helped fellow knife makers out and finish their builds because they weren't able to use their shops, and those experiences were absolutely horrible as well. You go and help somebody out, you're not charging them anything, but you got to do it within your time frame, not their time frame, because you're helping them for free, putting your time and effort into it for free. And if they start nagging you, well, they can go ahead and complete their own things by themselves if they want to, but you're helping them out. My first few that I did like that were a nightmare. My first couple of customers where I cut the price on them were nightmare customers. I will probably never do that again. Know your worth. Make sure you charge the right amount for what you're going to do. But also, just like I was talking about with the tempering, the heat treat process and all that stuff, if you're going to make a custom knife or you're going to make a knife for somebody, you need to make sure you're giving them something that's quality, something that's worth a damn, and something that's going to last them longer than they're going to live. That's the whole point behind this. You make heirloom quality stuff. You don't just make something and hand it to them. They can get that crap from overseas. Let's see here. Awesome. And then very wise advice on pricing, custom work. Yep. Can I survive a business plan? I'll lose. No, you really can't. You cannot decide that you're willing to lose money to get money. That makes no sense, especially if you're doing this as an income. You're not trying to cut your own income, because that's what happens. You know, you tell people what it's going to cost, because let's say you make that knife, but you're not giving yourself time to make other things for money or do other things. All you're doing is cutting your own budget down because you're settling for something. And I know that a lot of people want to get their knives into people's hands and think that word of mouth is going to get you a lot of sales. Some people think, I need to start a YouTube channel because I want to be able to sell my knives. I need to get an Instagram because I want to be able to sell my knives. I need to get a Twitter, a TikTok, whatever it is, because you think that that is going to help you build your knife business when it's really not. Doing YouTube is probably the worst idea that you could possibly have within a knife creator. It takes a year plus to be able to even get some sort of a following, and then to get where I'm at right now, I mean, we're looking at over 4 years to just get to where I'm at. So does it help me now? 100%. It does. Heck, I sometimes make more money off the YouTube revenue on a knife than I do the actual knife, which is nice. But it took this whole entire time to be able to even get to that point. Why is Chip not heckling you? That's a good point. So whenever you're thinking about it, you want to make sure that, again, that knife making is helping you. It's not hurting you. All this stuff costs money. Your abrasives cost money. The wood costs money. Handle material, man, let's say somebody wants a custom build, but the handle material alone for that build costs $35. You know, people aren't giving handle material away for free anymore. I mean, just getting a set of scales, 30, 40, sometimes $50. You're that far into it and you haven't even put them on anything. Then you got to have your steel, you got to have your abrasives to be able to cut everything up, especially if you're doing this is all in a custom order. There's a lot of things that go into it. You got to have $100 invested in the knife and you haven't even touched anything. You haven't made it, you haven't paid yourself hourly to build it. So make sure that you're charging enough to be able to make sense for that. If you're doing a run of knives, again, if you're making a bulk order, 10 knives, something like that, it's a little bit different because you're going to be able to get everything in bulk. You're going to do it all back to back to back to back to back to back. It's going to take less time because you're not doing several different grinds. That's a little bit easier. If you're doing a custom one-off, make sure you're charging enough for it. It's hard enough to find time to make knives just as a hobby with family. Yep, full-time job. It really is. And I have no clue how I manage this, how I'm able to do YouTube, family, work. I work a lot, and I have no clue how to do it. And I also do car stuff that y'all don't even get to see on the channel. Do all my car stuff. I do all kinds of different stuff. Play World of Warcraft because I'm a nerd. And it's one of those things where I just make it work. All you got to do is just sleep 3 hours a night. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I also like to cook my family dinner. So one of my biggest things that I do every single day is I cook my family dinner. I love cooking. It's a huge stress relief for me. I grill like 4 times a week minimum because grilling's easy and it requires less dishes. But I go through and do that. Like tonight, I'm making pork chops. That's gonna be great as soon as I stop this. And but I'm secretly a twin. I do have people that look like me in this town. People think I'm a twin, but no, I'm not. I absorbed my twin in the womb, which is a fact. That's a real thing. So you just make it happen, guys. The big thing that I wanted y'all to take away from this is if you're going to go ahead and do your forge, feel free to make it based on this design. If you have questions about certain things for this, I will tell y'all where I got the bricks. I can make links for that, the bricks, the burners, all the stuff for it. If you wanted to recreate something like this, it's not hard, it's not complicated, it's very easy. It's like a set of Legos that you use a welder to weld things on. But, you know, be willing to think outside the box, try it out, see if it works, and call it good. Feel free to copy the design that's on this right here. You can always rewatch this and freeze frame on pretty much everything that I showed you here. and redesign it that way. I'm cool with that. You might try to turn your forge on its side. That was actually a crafty idea. Probably should have did that to this. It would have made it a little bit easier. So do stuff like that. You know, try and make your life a little bit easier so you're not having to use as many things. I did my forge like this so that I don't have to worry about using a baffle, so that I don't have to worry about messing with the steel as much whenever I'm doing things like normalizing or grain refinements or heat treating or forging or anything like that. It makes my life a lot easier. The least amount of times that I have to touch the steel while it's in the forge, the more time I'm saving by being able to do other things. So it just makes your life easy. When it comes to this right here, doing the actual tempering that way, again, thinking through what makes sense for what you're trying to achieve hardness wise, making sure that you're not screwing yourself because you're going off of what all the YouTubers say, and actually doing a little bit of reading and learning what the actual recipes are for the steels that you plan on using. They're really quick reads to be able to go through and Google heat treating for the steels that you're wanting to use, and actually reading through the process to where you actually understand why you do certain steps within that steel to achieve a certain, you know, end result, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a good quality knife, and learning what you need to do in that. You know, I had to do that because whenever I first started doing this, a lot of the YouTubers were just time-lapsing through everything. No one was actually breaking down the actual process, other than your Walter Sorrells and your you know, Simple Little Life, a couple of people like that. They were trying to help a little bit, but there was still a lot of time lapse, and there wasn't a lot of explanation for all of the steps. So you had to kind of just figure it out, go through, do the reading, do the research, so you make good decisions within your knife making. You know, that's what I did with this, and I got the exact end result that I wanted because I did something different than what everybody on YouTube does. There's some people that do this. I, of course, did not start this, so a lot of people, I got that idea from somebody else. What's up, Mr. The Riot? Let's see here. Notice refractory cement or lining. So don't need it. All my bricks fit tight together. This actually has a whole entire frame around it, so everything is pressed together and no flames come out any of the sides. So I don't have to worry about having refractory or anything like that. And you can have the forge on, and even though the flame is blowing at this brick right here, that whole entire time, that flame was blowing at this brick, and I can sit here with my hand on it. So, I mean, it might be about 85, 90 degrees right now, so there's no real need to have refractory or anything like that. This does everything that I need. If you were to look up the Apollo forge that Brian House does, it's all fabrics on the inside of his frame. Speaking of time, are you planning to forge grinder build? Hopefully here soon. What's up? Okay, guys, we are about at an hour. It was awesome hanging out with y'all. I think it's about time to go ahead and call this thing. If y'all have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section, especially if you're watching this after the fact, and I will answer those as well. So next week on Tuesday, at least that video that I'm assuming is going to release on Tuesday, might release on Wednesday, might release on Thursday. We are doing the guard and pommel and handle for the bolo knife, which is going to be really cool. Something a little bit different than what I typically do. Actually, this will be a first on this particular build, so hopefully y'all are excited about that. That's what's going to happen on it. If you have any ideas for what you want me to talk about next Thursday, make sure to leave them in the comment section of the videos. We'll make it happen. Guys, thank y'all for being here. Y'all have an amazing day. Stay safe. I'll catch y'all next time.